Kia ora koutou. On behalf of the UC Connect crew, I ask you to please listen as we review the emergency procedures of this lecture theatre. There are 4 emergency exits. Take a minute to locate the exit closest to you. Note that the nearest exit may be behind you. Should the lecture theatre experience shaking, stop, drop and hold. Then listen to instructions from the UC crew. In the unlikely event of a fire, please listen to the UC Connect crew as we evacuate together to the Clyde Road car park. While we wait for takeoff, please take a moment to say hi to the person beside you, or as I like to call them, your evacuation buddy. Right. Tēnā koutou, nau mai ke tiene hui. Ko Philippa Martin, taka wingoa, e haurangi, e pukaha, aho, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Right, I had to do a safety briefing and I'm like, that totally ruins my whole atmosphere, so I went a little bit funny on that one. Okay. So first I'd like to start by saying a little bit about who I am. So I am a proud mother of 2 girls. I am a keen hiker and I do way too much DIY in my spare time. I'm also a professor in the electrical and computer engineering department, and for that I do a lot of teaching. I also do research, I supervise research students, and then apart from that I'm a researcher myself, and I'm part of the board of governors for an international community of communications engineers around the world. And then on top of that, because that's not enough stuff to do yet, okay? So on top of that, I'm also the dean of around about 1,000 first-year engineering students. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Okay, so that's who I am. Oh, exciting. Okay, right. So what I wanted to talk about first is why I'm still really excited about engineering after 25 years, and why it's super important that other underrepresented people are also excited about engineering. So engineers change the way we see the world, they change the way we live in the world, they have a huge impact on our lives. So they help us see the universe, they're designing a more sustainable future, they're powering our lives, they're designing where we live, where we work, where we move, how we communicate. Engineers are messed up in all of this. Power. I know, exciting stuff. My particular part in this is 5G communications. So this is what keeps me excited and what I've been working on. So at the moment, we're starting to roll out 5G communications. How many people got the leaflets in their letterbox? We're not trying to destroy your lives as you know it. Okay, just going to put that out there right now. Now, what we're trying to do is actually enhance your lives, hopefully. Things that are going to be coming forward a lot in this next generation. It's going to be a lot more with drones. A lot of work around healthcare, so making sure that people get the medicines they need, that processes are moving really smoothly within a hospital, that we can actually find things out about your health a lot earlier. So things like being able to put chips under your skin, being able to communicate with them to be able to detect your health earlier, to be able to do something about it. There's heaps and heaps of possibilities with healthcare that we can look at. Emergency services, some of the work I've done in that area is looking at things like bioharnesses on our emergency service workers. So being able to see what are their vital signs. Are they safe in the field? Have they fallen over, or are they actually just crawling through a fire space? What's going on? How do we keep them safe? Communicating all of this back to the base station, to the control centre, to keep the emergency workers healthy, happy and in a good place. Being able to make sure that they know where all their equipment is at the end of a fire so that they're ready to get the next one underway. Being able to make sure with sensors that they know the hot spots in buildings, or they know other people around them. All of that, there's a lot of communications required in that. Now, we get all excited about autonomous driving, but for me, I just want no more kids killed on driveways and no more cyclists knocked off on Maidstone Road. That would be a really good start. Another cyclist, I can tell. Okay, so there's a lot we can do around smart cities, smart agriculture. This is going to be particularly important for New Zealand. Manufacturing, supply logistics, it sounds boring, but it's all really important. Virtual and merged reality. Now, there's a lot of really cool, fun stuff we can do around gaming and other stuff like that, but also Lately, I've been thinking about my carbon footprint. Anybody else been thinking about that recently? And think about what it's doing to the environment every time I travel, and I love to travel. But it's not very good on the environment, right? So if I'm going to a meeting for Auckland for one day and then flying back, to me that's not very good for the planet, or for me. If I could use virtual reality and have a meeting so it feels like I'm in the room with the other people, but I've actually been able to stay here in Christchurch, that would be a win for me. I win time and the planet's in a better place. Remote surgery as well. If we had a medical emergency down in Antarctica, it would be really handy to be able to have somebody somewhere else being able to help go through that surgery with this virtual reality or merged reality. So lots of opportunities there. It's going to be really exciting to watch over the next decade, as well as the really fun stuff with the entertainment. So what I'm trying to get across here is that communications is having a huge impact on society. Now we get geeky excited about all this technology stuff. We're already talking about 6G. So people are still really upset about 5G and they're worried about what's happening. We're already on to 6G. 5G is old hat. Okay, as soon as people in the real world know what it is, we've moved on. So what's it about? Well, Nokia Bell Labs, one of the people there has been saying it's about a sixth sense. So sixth sense experience for humans and machines where biology meets AI. Science fiction. Cool, right? What could possibly go wrong? So in sort of normal person speak, I like to think of this as a deepened personalization of services. So meaning the services can predict my needs, because it's about me, yes, and provide me with good advice. Okay. But then I think about this for a second. In order for them to do that, they need to know a lot about me. Okay, Google already knows way too much about me, right? So they know about where I physically am. They know about my personal preferences. They know about my health needs, especially if I've got a chip under my skin, giving them that information in real time. So suddenly, what is personal? What is the definition of personal when all of this information's out there being used? To help you, hopefully. And then it comes down to privacy. In this new era, what does privacy mean? What is privacy? Who controls the privacy? What does it mean? Yeah, I'm an engineer, just in case anyone's confused. Okay. So we're moving, in my opinion, into an era of socio-technical design. So socio-technical, we need to think not just about the technical information, but about the legal, it's important, the psychological, and the economic requirements. I want to add to that list environmental and also social justice. I think those two are very important additions that also need to be in there. So we've got researchers starting to argue that social awareness and responsibility on an individual, on a community, and on a societal level need to be part of the design of 6G communications right from the start. Okay. So we're trying to build ethics into 6G communications right from the start. So when I read this, I'm like, yes, awesome. And then I went to a comms conference in Shanghai. It's our biggest one, and I sat there and I was like, yay, I'm going to hear some machine learning, technical, bits, signals. It was all the same stuff again and again. Lots of wonderful, wonderful, creative, intelligent people all talking about the technology, all talking about the very pure engineering side of it. I didn't hear one conversation about the societal impact. I mean, I heard those conversations, but it was more about this is the cool stuff we can do, not these are the unintended consequences or implications of what we can do. And this is something that we need to be thinking about. So here's a little toy example, it's just a little one, on what can go wrong. Or right, depending on your point of view. So in 2017, Snapchat, they came up with a cool new feature. They're like, woohoo, we've come up with a good idea, we'll implement it, put it out there, what could possibly go wrong? Again, one of my favourite sayings. Okay, so basically what happened is you'd get your Snap, you'd put it out there, and it would show your location. But it would show you your location to everybody on your friends list. Let's just say a few relationships ended. Okay, so that wasn't very popular. Okay, so that you can consider that to be a good or a bad thing depending on where you are. that's all good. I'm not going to get into that moral debate. But another thing, of course, is my personal safety. So as a woman who often walks alone at night, probably shouldn't be admitting that to you all, hello internet, this is actually quite a concern for me, because it's not just the people on my friends list, it's anybody around them when they're looking at the phone of my friend that can also see where I am. And what if it's a friend that I haven't got round to unfriending because I'm now worried they're stalking me? So it's a safety risk as well. So there's all these unintended consequences which can be involved in this engineering. So if engineers only think about that technical and the cool new feature and they're not thinking about those social implications, I think this is a problem. So I'm saying we need to move into an era of socio-technical design. What era are we currently in? It's a shocker, isn't it? You didn't see that one coming. Okay, we're currently in an era of a world designed for the average man. Okay, so if we look, since I'm into DIY, don't I look spectacular there? That's my sexy look, yep. The standard US male face is what's used for our dust, hazard, and eye masks, and they don't fit very well. They really don't. They did a report in 2017 and it said that only 5% of women emergency workers weren't hampered by their personal protective equipment. So that means 95% of them were struggling through this personal protective equipment. So things like their body armour, their stab vests, their high-vis vests and their jackets were all unsuitable. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, now this is me in winter in my office. I've got one of my kids' old cot blankets, my fingerless gloves, my puffer jacket on. Haven't quite got to the hat, but I'm not beyond a hat. I'm cold. And the reason for this is back in the 1960s, they decided that the standard office temperature should be based on the male metabolic resting rate. Mine's different. Okay, I need another 5 degrees, people. Okay, now this one really gets me irritated. Okay, I'm just going to warn you now. We've got a bit of separation, so you should be safe. Okay, in a car crash, female drivers are 17% more likely to die. Say, what? I'm not happy about that. 47% more likely to be seriously injured, 71% more likely to be moderately injured. That's not fair. You might say, yeah, but that's because you're smaller or you're taller or you're shorter or whatever. Okay, the researchers even put in control factors for height, weight, seatbelt usage and crash intensity. And I'm still more likely to get messed up. Now that is messed up, right? Okay, and why is this? It's because of how the car was designed and for whom it was designed. Okay, it is due to the position of the seat, it's due to the softness of the seat, it's due to the crash test dummy size they used. All of these things are contributing. There's also a lot of research out there on drugs, and something like at the end of the last decade, 8 out of 10 drugs were removed from use in the US because they were statistically more likely to harm women. Okay, so we've got a bit of an issue there. So basically my position is, if you want to live in a society that serves you and others like you, then you need to be involved in its design and its implementation. And the reality is that engineers have a massive societal impact. So I'm not talking about quotas, I'm talking about the fact we need a diverse engineering population so that we have things designed in our society to suit a diverse range of people, because we are a diverse group of people. So let's look at the research on diversity. So the research on diversity has said when we're solving complex problems, and I can think of a few, global warming, ageing population, it goes on, right? A few issues. We need a diverse team of people who are able to view problems differently. Why? Because this leads to breakthroughs. It expands the set of possible solutions. We get better problem solving. We've got a larger talent pool, we know we need more engineers, and it's going to have long-term economic growth. So the commercial people are happy too. So it's not just about fairness, it's actually about the quality of engineering. And given the problems we're facing, we need really high quality engineering. It also encourages us to work harder and prepare better. How many people have had a meeting coming up and you know that that difficult person's going to be there? And you know they're going to try to take you down. Okay? You work harder, right? you prepare more, you have your arguments ready. So unfortunately, they're kind of useful and they're kind of helping you out. So we find that dissent from different people from ourselves has been found to provoke more thought. So actually having people that you have that friction with, that you have that different thought with, again, it's leading to better results. Now here I'm going to be talking a lot about women, but I just want to acknowledge that diversity is much broader than gender, and gender is much broader than binary. So please acknowledge that for a moment. There's also other parts of our life which can feed into engineering work in a really cool way. So your hobbies and other pastimes can actually feed into your engineering solutions, bring different talents to teams which can help. So there's a whole lot of different ways in different parts of our lives that can feed into us having different viewpoints that are valuable. So I can't believe, to be honest, that in 2019, when I'm like quarter of a century into my engineering career, that I'm still going on about women in engineering. Why is it still a focus? Okay, let's get this one out of the way first. Okay? We know someone's going to want to go there, right? So are women biologically and psychologically capable of being engineers? I'm going to take us back to 1940. Some of you might know of Hedy Lamarr, bit of a rock star in my world, wireless communications. So she was a Hollywood superstar, right? But she actually started out being the wife of an arms dealer in Europe during the war. So she was brought along as the bit of eye candy to the meetings about all these weapons. And when she was there, she had a few thoughts. She didn't voice these because that wasn't done, but she had them. And one of the things they were talking about was the problem of a torpedo and the boat. So they could, if they used the frequency signal without the wires, then somebody could intercept it and then control the torpedo and bring it back on them. Not good, right? If they used the wires, then they could only go so far and it was problematic. So she thought, well, what if you kept hopping the frequencies that you were transmitting at? Then they couldn't intercept it, you wouldn't need the wire, right? Okay. She managed to escape, got to the US, and then found this experimental musician. And he did stuff like with the piano rolls and the little perforated patterns. And they worked out if they put one of those perforated patterns in the torpedo and one in the submarine, then they could set them going at the same time when they were on the boat, and then you could hop the frequencies. Really cool idea, right? In her movie trailers, she had experiments going. Did you know that? This lady's awesome. Okay, well, she was awesome, I should say. It's now estimated that her invention was worth $30 billion. That's how much it's been worth in a commercial sense already. Okay, pretty cool, right? She donated the patent that she was awarded with George Antheil, the musician, to the War Office. Okay, how many people here think that the War Office took it seriously? Ooh, tough room. No, what they said was, can you go away and earn us lots of money through war bonds? And she did. She sold something like $343 million worth of war bonds in modern terms. So she did really well. She got a lot of money raised for the war effort, and good on her. It wasn't until 20 years later that they unearthed it, and they brought that into being with the Cuban Missile Crisis. 20 years. It was initially only allowed to be used for military applications because it was too hard to crack. It was too hard to find. When they brought it in commercial operations, they had to bring in the frequency ranges you were allowed to hop in so that they could crack it, because the military wanted to be able to tell what we were doing. Okay, so a real rock star, but not recognised in her time. But it's different today, right? Who remembers the Google memo? I laugh, but it actually caused a lot of pain to our female students here on campus when this came out. Because what was really upsetting is that we're once again being told that we can't do this, right? So we're being told that compared with men, women on average are more attracted to aesthetics than ideas. Say, what? More empathising than systematic, more extroverted than introverted, less assertive. You're noticing that with me, right? Quite retiring type. Okay, less competitive. Do not play a game with me. Okay, and so we're going to have more difficulty negotiating higher salaries. Youngest professor ever in my department, peoples. Okay, apparently I've also got a lot of neuroticism going on. Lower stress tolerance. Yeah, because being a mum's like stress-free, people. Higher anxiety and less willing to work long hours. If you had a baby, okay, come on, that's the longest hours ever, 10 years, no rest. Okay. Then what was even harder, because you think, oh, New Zealand's different than America, is we had one of our own saying we were less suited. So a female software engineer in New Zealand, she ran a software engineering company, she went on and did an opinion piece on Stuff and said, I believe women are generally not as suited for software engineering roles as men. Come on, come on. We weren't happy about this. She was a software engineer. What's she saying? So let's just backtrack even further. I think we need to go further back in time for a second here. To the time when the computer wore a skirt. Okay, so in the 1840s, Ada Lovelace is known as the first ever programmer. She wore a dress, just saying. 1950s, the reason we use words in programming is because of Grace Hooper. So machine-independent programming languages, she's accredited for that. The modern cost concept of software and actually getting a man on the moon, that was Margaret Hamilton in the 1960s. If you've seen Hidden Figures again, it's showing women were actually involved in computing right from the start. It was women's work, thank you very much. So the gendered brain. Let's go to Nature, that's a reputable source. They've got a book review out at the moment. Well, actually in February they came out with that. And their research found that the brain is no more gendered than the liver or the kidneys or the heart. So what's going on? Most of us remain strapped in a biosocial straitjackets that divert a basically unisex brain down to one culturally gendered pathway or another. Okay. So our gendered pathway, let's look at that for a little moment. That should be fun. Okay, so does engineering equate to beer, blokes, and building things, not people? None of us have ever thought that, right? None of us have ever heard that. Let's have a look. Oh man, I don't think my colleagues are here. I might get in trouble. Okay. Until a few years ago when I had one of my notorious rants, I do these rather regularly, these were our flagship projects in electrical and computer engineering. Okay, see if you can spot the theme, it's quite subtle. Solar car, wacky races, go-karts, helicopter project, RoboCup, Shell Eco Challenge, UCM Formula SAE electric race car. I didn't leave any out and I'm not taking the piss. They're all vehicles. Now my colleagues are awesome, right? They do research on biomedical stuff, they do renewable energy, they do all of this really cool stuff. They actually went to Tonga and put solar panels on schools because they didn't have electricity and they wanted to help out. They do all this mind-bending, amazing stuff, right? And then for our undergraduate students, we were making them do all vehicles. And I'm like, yeah, they're really cool, guys. They're really cool vehicles, but some people might want to do something else. So now we do, and the number of women is going up. Okay. Oh, man. Is NSOC here? We've got a wee image problem, okay? I know. It's been really nice having a job. Now, they've had a controversial past, the Engineering Student Society at Canterbury, and this is some of it. Okay, so this year, they used to do the Roundy 500 that went down to Dunedin until the riots got too intense. And this was their pinnacle. The theme of that particular year was be as offensive as you can, and our students are high performing. It was appalling, it really was bad. But then we thought, oh, they've learnt the lesson. And then they wanted to sell a lolly mixture. And they thought there's a rapper called 50 cents. So let's do a blackface video. Now, we may laugh about this, but I literally had people in my lectures when I went to class that day, and they were really upset. They were really, really upset. Now, I don't spend a lot of time on the news, and I had no idea what was going on, so it took me a little while to click. And then I'm like, but nobody would do that. And they're like, yeah, they have. I'm like, no. Okay. So the side of NSOC you don't see, the side of NSOC that's not reported, is they actually do a hell of a lot of good. And they've been doing a lot of cool stuff over the last 2 years. They've been helping us with Pink Shirt Day. They do tutorials for our first year students and our professional year students. They run careers festivals. They help students with their CVs. They help set up a peer mentoring program for 1,000 students in 5 months on top of all their other courses. They run good social events that are safe. They do a lot of amazing, amazing stuff. But unfortunately, the only stuff that ever gets reported out is the times when it went wrong. When young people made questionable life choices. Who in this room has never made a questionable life choice? Especially when you're in your early 20s, right? Even in your early 40s, okay, right. So engineers are people prepared to make a difference. And this is the image, and this is what keeps me excited about engineering, and this is the side of engineering that I know, that I love, but that you don't all get to see necessarily. We're trying to make safer structures, so regardless of what Mother Nature throws at us, we're going to be alive, we're going to be safe, we're going to be together. Safer workplaces, so here they're looking at chopping down trees and things like that, having robotics go into places where we don't want people. Here they're printing a 3D foot for a penguin that had lost its foot, making sure our waterways are safe. Engineers Without Borders, humanitarian engineering is one of the degrees you can do here, or in addition to your degree. Looking at a lot of biomedical stuff and e-medicine stuff. So a lot of things about how to make your life safer and better. Okay. You thought you might get a breather, but no, we're still going. So how much of a boys' club is engineering? It's getting better. During enrolment, it was actually at 20%, but then something went wrong. I don't know what it is. I think somebody enrolled a whole lot of men right at the end. But we're doing really well. We're going to crack 20% next year, I'm pretty confident. So we're doing well. Auckland's also getting a lot more women into engineering. It is going up. It is improving. So that's really exciting. Now, last night, hot off the press, I'm so excited. We have one discipline that has over 50% women. I know, wow. Like, wow. I had to tell my friend Ash straight away, didn't I, Ash? So she's one of our amazing natural resources engineers. So yes, the natural resources engineering has now gone above 50% women in its professional years for the first time. The chemical and process engineers, they're pretty consistent, around a third of the class being women. The civil engineers have managed to get up now to 23%, so over the last, well, since 2006, that's gone up 10%. So that's pretty cool. Forget the forestry, it's a really small cohort. A third of their first pro was actually women, okay? It's just their third pro is entirely men. It's not 9 students, so give them a break. Okay, the rest of us are between the 10 to 20%. So I wanted to give you a graphic on what it looks like. So here's my cohort. I've blanked out the faces in case people don't want to be as famous as me. Okay. So pink, I went warehouse gender aisles, and so we've got the pink for the women and the blue for the men. Apologies for that. So we were 10%. There were 12 women out of 120 students. Now, 2007, this is when I started all this work, it's going to look heaps different, eh? Looks a bit worse, eh? We now teach into 3 degree programs. The solid ones are the staff. These are our incredible administrative staff. And then the students, again, blue and pink. So it takes a while to find them, but they're there. Okay, so we have 2 women. We have me, the female lecturer, and we have our female technician. Okay, so that was the triple E's. Up there we have the mechatronics. They have Stephanie's there, representing the women, academics, and then we had 3 female students. The computer engineers, they actually do have 1 woman, but she didn't come. So it's not quite as bad as that. Yeah. Help. But in the profession it's better. Of course it's not better, okay? Because we're the pipeline. We bring them through. But it gets a little bit bleaker than that, just because I feel I'm giving you a rosy picture. We need a little bit of time for reality. Okay. This is female retention in non-STEM fields. Okay, after 19 years, you get a bit of a drop. This is STEM. Oh, after 19 years, 40%. So you and me, Ash. Pretty impressive, eh? Yep, so it's not good. So it's really hard getting women into the field, and then we're not keeping them in. Why? Let's have a look at what it was like to be an engineering student and a woman back in the 1990s. I call this the 1,000 paper cuts, the cutting edge or the bleeding edge if you don't want to think of menstruation. Apparently that's why I wasn't allowed to use that title. So that's why it became the cutting edge. Okay, so what was it like for me? Well, I went along to my lab benches, and that's not my year, that's actually a previous year, I'm not that old. And I got pushed away from lab benches by the male students, because what would I know about electronics? I mean, fair point, I didn't know anything, but I picked things up pretty fast, eh? I had lab paper, well, test papers ripped out of my hands, and then I'd get pushed or pinched because I'd do better than them. Well, they should study more. So what was it like when I did my work placement? Oh, my first work placement was a treat. Oh, yes. So the male student that was there with me, and he was a C student, just saying, he was doing engineering work. He also tried to tell me I'd be more likely to get a job because I was a woman, and I said, no, it's because I'm an A student, dude. But that's another point. Right, okay, so he got to do real engineering work. Guess what I got to do? I answered the phone. That's right, Professor of Engineering. I was answering the phone. I was doing the PowerPoint. Yep, I was doing the data entry into the Access databases. No shit. I'm telling you, this is what I did. So I made a little bit of a stink, given that I'm the retiring, non-assertive female stereotype. And they transferred me to another division, and it was awesome. And I even fainted in that one, and they still treated me with respect. So total credit to those engineers, right? But things must have changed over 20 years, right? Okay. This is when we start to get serious, people. So I was sitting in my office, and one of our top students, a woman I totally respect, she's an incredible person, came into my office and told me about her reality. It was exactly the same, almost situation for situation to what I'd experienced in the 90s. But it was actually worse. For a reason. Now there was social media. There was a whole new avenue for harassment. Because the cohorts collaborate on Google Docs. The project teams were required by their industry sponsor to use the Slack messenger system. You can send private messages on that. But what if you've told one of your teammates you're not interested in them and they won't listen? Then there's Facebook. And those private cohort groups that the academics aren't allowed on, but the cohort all communicates on. So it had become a more complex space. But I didn't see this. One, because we were in all different buildings. We no longer had our home because of the earthquakes. So we were literally spread across the entire campus. And I wasn't on these media platforms, so I couldn't see it. So I decided that something had to change. I decided that me just being there and being a role model wasn't working, wasn't enough. So I decided to dedicate my time to trying to work out how to change things. Because I don't think we should have to put up with unwanted touching. That impacts participation. We should be able to sit in a lecture theatre without somebody we don't know putting their hand on our thighs, or touching us when we're waiting outside a lecture theatre. That shouldn't be happening. We've seen in the media throughout New Zealand at universities and around the world this is happening. The online platforms. Stuff's happening online, but it's impacting inclusion, it's impacting what's happening in real life as well. I should be able to be safe online. The microaggressions, the slurs, the bullying, that impacts belonging. You're on a poster. That's just because they want engineers with tits. That's why you're there. No, it's not. It's because you're a bloody good engineer. That's why you're there. The racial slurs, being called a pussy if you don't want to do things. Idiot, retard, being told you're biologically different. And that's why you don't get the jokes. This shouldn't be happening in 2019. But it is, and it's not isolated incidents. It's again and again and again and again. And it's not just here, it's around the world, and it's got to stop. It's not okay. But here are the 4 things, and I actually count them off on my fingers now, because I've got a bit of a sense of humour, as you might have, a bit dark, but it's all good. And this is what happens when somebody comes, when a woman comes and tells about their experience. But was it really that bad? Okay, that's the first one. Don't you think you're overreacting? That's the second one. It was just harmless banter. That's the third one. And the fourth one, they didn't mean anything by it. What I've got in grey there is what internally you're hearing. Is there something wrong with me? Am I a drama queen? Am I overreacting? Did I imagine it all? What's happening? Small wounds, like those little paper cuts, they hurt like hell, but it's a paper cut, so you don't really feel like you've got that sort of street cred with it, right? So was it really that bad? Yes, it was. Why? Because it's happened 1,000 times, and you're number 1,001. Don't you think you're overreacting? No, I'm not overreacting, I'm over it. Was it just harmless banter? It wasn't harmless, it hurt. It's affecting me being able to be here and me feeling like I belong here. They didn't mean anything by it. That's actually irrelevant. It wasn't okay. It needs to stop. But natural resources is already there. We're going up. Would 50% women fix it all? Okay, let's have a little look. Let's have a look at Harvey Mudd, because they have achieved it. They've managed to get half of the college's STEM graduates being women. Yes, pretty cool, eh? And they did that. It was really hard work, but they did that. One, they're a private school and they get to pick the students. Not us. We welcome you all. Okay. But they also did a lot of work behind the scenes to come up with a plan and to get faculty on board with this plan for unsurpassed excellence and diversity at all levels. They wanted to create an environment that was supportive and engaging for everyone. Now, this is a really awesome goal, right? This is a good thing. Then in 2017, they had a horrendous year. They had 2 students die in separate incidents. They had a report with unvarnished opinions released. These opinions were that of faculty, and it was about the students. This ended up being in sit-ins and protests that followed. The university went into crisis mode. They had 60 students on a list that other students were worried were going to commit suicide or were going to have a mental breakdown. They just spent the rest of the year trying to keep their students safe. They even closed classes for 2 days. Okay, they went into crisis mode. Now this is who we were all looking at to work out how do we do this. And so 50% is not going to do it. So gender parity is possible. You need resourcing, buy-in from staff, strategic plan, and the ability to choose students helps. But managing a diverse community takes a lot of care. Remember we talked about those diverse opinions and how they're really powerful? There's a lot of management in that too, because you've got a lot of people that are going to be clashing heads, right? A lot of people with different opinions. There's going to be a lot of disagreements there as well. It's really important to keep the dialogue between staff and students open. It's really important that it's a partnership. And a student's well-being, physical, social, and mental, is just as important as their academic success, just as important. And we've got to also look at the workload in engineering. It's punishing. I've got a few students here. I know you're not going to disagree with me, right? I'm trying. Okay. So what is UC Engineering doing about this? Okay, it's one thing to know it's there, but if you're just going to talk about it, that's meaningless. So at the beginning of last year, the PVC was awesome. I said, hey, I want to do something. And she said, okay, let's create a position for you. Best boss ever. Okay, so basically this position gives me some buyout time so that I can try to create strategic initiatives for the life cycle of engineering intermediate. So diversity with recruitment, belonging in the first year, and inclusion when we get into the professional years. That's the way I've broken it down. Okay, so the first thing I'll tell you about is we've got an outreach program, the weekend residential program. Applications are still open if you know someone that might be interested. We bring women in from around the country and we get them to experience all the different types of engineering for a week, and then they go home and they tell other women about it, and it's amazing, and the people that come are incredible, and it's really hard to get into. We have a peer mentoring program that we started last year for 1,000 students. This year we had 53 mentors. We managed to get over 900 of those 1,000 students participating. And we had over doubled the number of students that came along to sessions this year compared to last year. We bring in truckloads of snacks. Like literally, you come and there's just boxes, it's a whole wall, and the receptionist is kind of peering out from the boxes. It's insane. Okay, they do peer support, they do talking, they do games, they bring in tutors, anything they can do to make those students have a really amazing first semester and help them make some friends, because it's actually really hard to make friends, especially if you're women. So we also have a few women's groups so that they can meet some girlfriends, because that's really important to have your girl network as well. We also have 2 incredible groups in engineering, WITSOC and Women in Engineering, and they do so much stuff. And it's little things you wouldn't think of. Like WITSOC will actually go with a student. So if she's a bit afraid to go to the professor, maybe he's a bit intimidating, they'll actually go along with you so that you can go to the professor with somebody else. You don't have to go by yourself. They have cocktail nights, they do tech interviews, bring in industry speakers, have industry nights, lots of study sessions, board games, engineering challenges with the Women in Engineering group there. So they do lots of really cool stuff. Women in Technology is a women-only group, so it's not UCSA affiliated because it's just about the girls. We're special. And then Women in Engineering also allows the men to come in, so it has that male ally aspect to it as well. Both really, really important, really amazing clubs. Some other stuff we're doing is with the professional years, a lot of it's group work. And the group work is where we started to see the most harassment and the most friction. So what we want to do with that teamwork is help people to have the interpersonal skills to deal with conflict, but also to help them understand the value of that diversity. The fact that you disagree with something could actually mean you get a better project out of it at the end. Okay? So why not recognize their skills? They may not be skills in the form you're familiar with, but that doesn't mean those skills are not there. So we're doing a lot of work with that. Also fostering community and belonging, because it's easier to ignore those stereotypes when you see them as a person and not as a category and not as a stereotype, but see the person underneath it all. We're also doing a lot of work around behaviour processes. So we have over 1,500 new people join the College of Engineering every year. They come from diverse backgrounds and have completely different views on the world and what's acceptable and unacceptable behaviour. That's not going to change. We're going to keep bringing new people in every single year. So culture-wise, we need to help them understand what our culture is. So we're doing a few things in the behaviour space. UC now has an anonymous reporting tool that went live just a few months ago. We've also done a lot of work on clarifying and making known our processes and resources, both to students and staff. We've got a network for action in the diversity space around the college, and we're feeding into some amazing people overseas, our student clubs, and a lot of resources around the campus. So we're bringing together a lot of amazing people to help us do the best we can for our students. We're training a group of 17 staff. Now these are the really busy people, but they are setting aside 2 hours every week at the moment during term time to come and learn motivational interviewing. Why are we doing this? We're doing this so that we can have early change conversations around behaviour. So when we start to see behaviour that's not in line, that's not going to serve them in their professional life, we can actually have conversations about that and try to change it before it becomes proctor level, really serious. Our first year engineering students from last year, and this year as well, they create their own code of conduct in 2 workshops and 3 lectures. They get to vote on it. We collate all that information into a formal and an informal one, and both years they've wanted the formal version to be the code of conduct. We then pass that on to the professional years. They get to vote if they want to keep it or create another one, and so each professional year also has its own code of conduct. This month we're bringing online bystander training. We're starting with our student leaders, and then we're going to go for our staff. If there's any UC people here that want to do this, there are still some spaces available to do the bystander training. We can't be everywhere. We need people in our community that are willing to stand up for other people and help them out when things don't go the way we want. Rainbow. I've talked mainly about women, but of course gender is much wider than just male and female, so we're working hard to improve the support for our rainbow community. We've got a rainbow coordinator that started last month. We're doing awareness training with staff. The UC staff Queer Straight Alliance was formed last year, and we're doing a lot trying to get more gender neutral toilets, because you shouldn't have to walk 10 minutes when you've only got 10 minutes between class. Okay, a toilet should be closer than that. It's ridiculous. So in engineering, I can kind of summarise what we're trying to do as far as helping diverse teams know how to work well together, culture of speaking out, creating a real community, making sure our values are known, making our expectations very clear, and having consequences when things don't go right. Okay, now it comes to you. You thought you could just sit there and listen, right? Nah. So what I want you now to think of is what you can do as individuals about this problem. So the first thing I'd say is follow passions, not stereotypes. Don't just go down the pink aisle of the warehouse for your girls. There's much more interesting things than that. Make some cool stuff. Try lots of different things so you can actually work out what you like, not what society tells you you like. Avoid biased insults, like throw like a girl. Although if it means throwing like this, I'm totally in. Okay? Use capability-based compliments. I remember being in a staff student meeting. He is really good at nanotechnology, world leading. He does amazing power systems research. She's popular with the students. Do some pretty cool research, people. Won some teaching awards, but yeah, I'm popular. Seriously, come on, think about it. When you go through a birthing unit, you can tell if it's a male baby or a girl baby, all based on how the people are talking. Do it next time you're at the shops and you can't see the kids, can't see the gender of the kids. Walk down and then see if you can predict whether it's a male or a female child. It's a good game to play. You'll be able to work it out. Take the gender out of chores. My kids are lucky, they get to do all the chores. And make it an equitable division of chores, okay? You're role modelling people. I shouldn't have to do all the chores because I was a woman. Okay, now for any men out there that are feeling a little bit like, is it safe for me to be here? Male allies, oh my goodness, I wouldn't be here without them. Every single one of the men in these photos, I can tell you a story about something incredible they did for me. So respect, advocate, nominate, connect, include. Now this last one I thought is the one I'd talk about. I call it the credit parrot. So over the years, as a senior supervisor of research students, I've had a number of male students, both PhD and masters, that have trouble agreeing to do what I say. Okay, so I have these 3 amazing co-supervisors, and do you know what their primary role is? I agree with Philippa, you should do blah, 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 blah. And they parrot what I said. I think Philippa's right, you really should do blah, 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 blah. And they do it. It's ridiculous. Okay, they have other contributions as well. They're incredible people and I choose them for their technical knowledge. Okay, I don't want to disrespect these 3 incredible men. But one of the key roles they play is literally, for these particular students, is parroting, saying back what I say. They always give me credit first, without exception. So if you're finding that your female staff, colleagues, whatever, are not getting that respect, that's how to do it. Say, I agree with, insert name here, that we should do this. Always credit it, but repeat it. okay? You shouldn't need to, and one day hopefully you won't, but for now you do. And be a badass bystander, okay? You might be happy with direct confrontation, but you might not be. There's other things you can do, like distracting. If you're worried about someone's safety, go up and say, oh, can you help me find the library? Okay, make it somewhere that's a little bit hard to get to so they can always go with you and show you if they want to safely get away from that situation. Or if the conversation's really offensive, what about saying, oh, can we just stop that for a second? I really need your advice about blah, 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 blah. Make stuff up, okay? It doesn't matter. But distract them, stop the conversation, okay? So that's one way of doing it. Delegate, go and get help. Okay, whether it be a teacher, whether it be a boss, whether it be the police, whoever it is, seek help if you need to. If it's safe to do so, document it. Record it, write it down later, be a witness. Delayed check-in. I've had so many women come to me and they said nobody in the cohort would do anything to help me until one of my friends, he emailed me and said it wasn't okay what they did to you. And that meant so much. So if you get home and you're kicking yourself because you didn't do anything, that actually works, okay? It means a lot. Go back to them and say, it wasn't okay what they did to you, are you okay? Oh, now's the hard one. It's like, oh, Philippa thinks she's all perfect. Nah. I've got some amazing friends, my friend Abby over there. She keeps me real. I've got biases too. I live in this and swim in the same swamp. And it rubs off on me, right? So you need to think, what are your biases? And you need to have people around you that'll call you out on them. Be mindful of your behaviours. Where are they coming from? What are the values behind them? Don't beat yourself up, we all have them, but do something about it, okay? Diversify your friend group, meet other people. Replace those stereotypes with real people. Flood your brain with positive attributes about these different stereotype groups. Change your mind. But don't verbalise it, that's hideously patronising, okay? Keep working at it. And again, have these people that will actually go and call you on it and say, Philippa, I didn't say he. Ooh. Oops. Okay. And reassess it, because you can change over time as well on where your biases are and what needs fixing. So that is the beginning of my talk, the end of my talk, but the beginning of what we need to do. So do we have any questions? Let's got one over there.
Good evening, thank you, it's very interesting. You started your lecture by talking about your concerns over ethics and privacy, but you also ended it by talking about the reporting app, the anonymous reporting app. How do you reconcile those two very different areas?
Yep, no, the anonymous reporting tool has been a 2-3 year journey of intense academic discussion. Because we were concerned about the right for privacy. So with the anonymous reporting tool, we can't act on the information gained directly. What we can do is look at processes. So if people are feeling unsafe in certain areas, we can look at advanced lighting there. If things are happening as far as processes, then we can do things on that sort of large scale. So it gives us a litmus test on how things really are underneath the surface, but we can't act on them. So it's a very difficult space, but basically it's a way of us trying to work out what we can do to make people safer.
I've heard a lot of negative things that have happened to you over the years, and what's kept you in this space? Like, what, I'm sure, have you had any scenarios where you've decided maybe you should not fight or just do what everyone else is doing?
Yep, that's a really good, fair point. I once had somebody ask me when I knew I was an engineer, and I said I was born an engineer. This is what I was born to do. This is who I am. I can't be anybody else. I've never considered leaving engineering. I absolutely love it. It's a privilege to actually help shape society. I get to forecast forward and imagine what's going to happen in 10 years' time, and I get to participate in that. The work that I get to do with Take Communications is really, really exciting to me. It's supporting our emergency workers, and that's something that I find very meaningful because they're doing some incredible work. So I've never regretted entering engineering, but I'm determined to make it safer and more enjoyable for other women.
Thank you very much. That was just wonderful and realistic, but also potentially optimistic. I'm very interested in what may happen in these project teams when people are students. Concerned, as you highlighted, the place of social media, the place where the people who've set up those projects can't go. What can be done to make those spaces in which everyone can thrive and one avoids some of the processes that seem to be diminishing of people's capacity to thrive in those group environments? Because as I understand engineering, and I'm a social scientist, collaboration and cooperative work is really important. It's also very important in my field, but we don't have some of the same. We have had male dominance, but we don't have some of the conventions of how that gets to be done, and it's easier, I think, for us to call it out.
It's the team space is a really complex space. From a student perspective, we don't get to see what's going on. In an industry perspective, obviously, it's done in office plans, and so there's people around. But when it comes to students, they do a lot of the teamwork after hours. They can be doing all-nighters even together in the computer labs. They can be there at 3 in the morning and they're all still working together. So it's a very complex space. I'm still doing research into this area. We've done a lot of data gathering about some of the problems that people are facing. A lot of it is in not understanding the value of other people's opinions and not having the interpersonal skills. I mean, I'm not going to try to say that engineers don't have huge interpersonal skills. That's not a stereotype at all. But there is a lot of complexity around that. So what is obvious for somebody that, hey, that person's getting agitated, to another person, they can't see it. So they're blindly going forward and causing even more concern when they don't actually realise they're causing pain. So there's actually a lot of trying to help engineers understand other people and how they work, as well as trying to work out the value in other people around you. So the research that's coming out of the US on this is showing that it really helps to be able to map the assets, and so that the whole team realises the different values from different parts of life that team members are bringing in, and then to use that in the project so that you've got skills you've already got that you're using, and then also looking at how you can develop your skills. And if you make students look at it in terms of these viewpoints, they've got some good results over in the US. So that's something I'm hoping to do within the next 12 months, is to look more at that.
Hi, have you been able to move forward being able to do engineering school part-time, because that recruits quite a few people, especially young mums and yeah, a lot of people actually.
Yeah, we don't have a part-time undergraduate option at all. Part-time for postgraduate, although we're very wary about doing that, especially for the PhDs. It's very difficult, but for the undergraduate, the current structure does not allow a part-time pathway.
Yeah, I know, but are you trying to move towards, do they realise how big a problem this is?
I'd say we're aware of it, but at the moment there isn't a solution for it. So you're saying you managed to finish part-time? We do have students finishing off, but they don't start part-time. Yeah. So they start off full-time and then they need a few more courses. So some of them will end up being part-time, but no, it's full-time. Yeah.
Hi. So a lot of this stuff has to come from the top down, and I'm wondering what the UC faculty are doing in terms of hiring for actual staff and getting representation in lecture theatres and in the teaching staff.
Yep. Very good point. So I'm still the only research active female in electrical engineering. Chemical and process engineering have never had a female academic in their entire history. They've tried really hard, because I've given them a lot of words about this, shall we say. I've also told my colleagues that they need to be going to conferences and they need to start recruiting. I went on one of my wee rants again just recently, and they're actually trying to handpick and cherry pick people, so they think they've found somebody else to join me, so I'm quite excited. The last one didn't last so long, but I don't think it was my fault. So we are trying to go out there and actively find women that are interested in coming here. It's things like changing the job ads. There's also things like reading the CVs and actually stripping it from gender information and looking at attributes like that. There's quite a few things you can do, but when you're looking at a pool of so few people, it's actually hard to get them. I mean, we've been very lucky recently. We've had Debbie Monroe come over from the US, and she's a real rock star. She's done a lot of biomedical stuff and animatronics and really cool stuff. So that's a really exciting thing, and we are welcoming more and more women into the faculty, and it's really exciting.
Do you foresee an opportunity of extending this a bit into connection, like an outreach to some high schools and staff there? I know in our school we're trying to change culture and aware of that, and I think it could be valuable, especially kids from our school, from a boys' school, going into your programs, that trying to have good attitudes.
Yeah, there's definitely work being done in high schools, so sometimes we have our students going out, which is pretty good, but there's always more we can do. There was some cool school tech programs where they had real engineers, not that I'm not real, I'm real, but ones from industry going into schools and actually helping them solder and doing all stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. So there's a lot of programs like that. I'm just not personally involved in them. But yeah. Trust Dad to give me the hard question. Thanks, Dad.
You outlined some really good reasons why engineering should be a diverse profession, and we're obviously not at 50%, which would reflect the society that we serve. What do you think about other professions? I mean, I'm asking you to comment on other professions. It might be a bit unfair, but professions like nursing that also are not reflective of the society they serve, but are diverse in the other direction.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to nursing because I don't know about that field, but one curious one has been law. So the only other faculty or school at this point around the University of Canterbury that's adopted the peer mentoring program we developed in engineering is the law faculty, because they were actually having a lot of the discrimination and harassment problems that we were having, and they're flipped. So they're now mostly women and very few men. But they were still finding that the women were getting harassed. So, I don't know. So there's still that problem going on. So they've started the peer mentoring program, and it was their first year this year, and apparently it went really, really well. So that was really exciting. So it doesn't seem to necessarily help. Also, they were finding that the students there, when they went into industry, they weren't used to the male dominance in some of the law firms as well. I imagine the nursing, again, it's a whole different set of complex problems with nursing as well, but I can't speak to that, I'm sorry. Okay, we are unfortunately out of time. I'm very happy to stick around afterwards and talk to you if you've got any more questions, and thank you very much for making it out here this evening, and remember your takeaways. Try to do at least 2 things.